The person reading this sentence is not the same person who will finish it. Because in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show you that your personality is a survival device, not your soul. And the moment you see that clearly, the life you've been managing starts to feel like a locked room. The key is not outside. The key is in the part of you that has been buried under years of performance. Carl Jung called that buried part the self. Not the ego, not the image, the self. And reaching it requires a descent most people spend their entire lives avoiding. This is not entertainment. This is a map, and the map starts with a wound you learned to hide so early that you may not remember learning it. Chapter 1. The mask you learn to wear. If you watch closely, you can see the moment a person disappears behind their own face. It happens at dinner, in a meeting, during a conversation. The eyes stay engaged, the mouth moves, but the person inside steps back. What remains is performance. That performance is not accidental. It was assembled. It was taught. It was rewarded. Jung called the public face the persona. The word comes from ancient theater, where actors wore masks not to hide the actor, but to project the role. Over time, the role starts paying the bills. It receives the compliments. It avoids rejection. And so the person identifies with the mask. That identification is the beginning of a long, quiet confusion. Here's the part most people miss. The persona is not evil. It is protective. It forms because a child learns quickly that certain emotions are acceptable and others are not. The boy who is told to stop crying does not stop feeling. He stops showing. The girl who is called too much learns to shrink. The teenager who is laughed at learns to perform. Each of these moments adds a layer to the outer shell. Think of a child who walks into a room full of adults and says something honest. Maybe the child says, "I'm scared." Maybe the child says, "I don't like that person." The adult reaction teaches the child whether honesty is safe. If the adult laughs, the child learns to hide fear behind a smile. If the adult scolds, the child learns to hide dislike behind politeness. This is not trauma in the dramatic sense. This is socialization. But socialization and soul loss often wear the same clothes. By the time you are an adult, you have dozens of micro-masks. One for work, one for family, one for strangers, one for friends, one for the version of yourself you show online. The problem is not that these masks exist. The problem is that you have started to believe they are you. And here's the dangerous question. If you remove all the roles, who is left? Most people cannot answer. Not because they are shallow, but because the real self has not been consulted in years. The real self is still waiting in the basement of the psyche, holding the emotions that were too much for the family system to hold. The mask was never a lie you told the world. It was a compromise you made with the world. You gave up a piece of your aliveness to secure belonging. That is not weakness. That is survival. But at some point, survival becomes a cage, and the cage is what we are here to examine. Chapter 2. The modern personality is an exhaustion machine. We now live in a culture that does not merely encourage masks, it demands them. The hyper-curated online identity is the most visible example. But the exhaustion is older than social media. It is the exhaustion of maintaining a self that is not sourced from within. Consider a man with 300,000 followers. He photographs his breakfast. He records his workouts. He posts his motivational captions. At dinner, he cannot taste his food because he is composing the post. At the gym, he cannot feel his body because he is framing the shot. At night, he stares at the ceiling and feels a hollow ache he cannot name. This man is not a hypocrite. He is an exhausted actor. His audience is fed. His soul is starving. Now consider a woman who receives an award at work. She smiles. She gives a gracious speech. Everyone claps. On the drive home, she pulls into a parking lot and cries without knowing why. The achievement is real. The recognition is real. But the person receiving it feels unreal. This is not depression in the clinical sense. This is dissonance. The public self is thriving. The private self is dying. Jung understood this split because he saw it in himself. He was a successful psychiatrist, a rising figure in the psychoanalytic world, but he felt that something essential was missing. He wrote that he had achieved everything the outer world could offer, yet the inner world was calling. That call eventually became the most important turning point of his life. More on that in a moment. First, you need to understand why the mask is so exhausting. The mask requires constant monitoring. You must remember how you presented yourself to different people. You must manage the gap between what you feel and what you show. You must suppress impulses that do not fit the image. This is not passive. It is active labor. Psychologists call it emotional labor. But it is deeper than that. It is identity labor. You are not just managing feelings. You are managing a false identity. And that false identity is running on borrowed energy. The body knows this before the mind does. The body sends fatigue, headaches, tight shoulders, shallow breathing. The body sends a quiet signal, stop performing. But the mind interprets the signal as a problem to fix. So you drink more caffeine. You optimize your sleep. You plan a vacation. But the exhaustion remains. Because the exhaustion is not about how much you do. It is about who you are being while you do it. Chapter 3. Why fixing the mask fails. Modern culture treats psychological pain like a broken appliance. If you feel anxious, fix the anxiety. If you feel empty, fill the emptiness. If you feel lost, optimize your morning routine. This is not evil. But it is incomplete. Many self-help systems are designed to polish the mask, not remove it. They teach you to reframe thoughts, adjust habits, and improve performance. They rarely ask, whose thoughts? Whose performance? Whose life? Jung made a distinction that changes everything. He said we cannot solve the problem of the persona by becoming better at the persona. We solve it by withdrawing energy from the persona and turning inward. That inward turn is not a spa day. It is a confrontation. It is the beginning of what Jung called individuation, the slow, painful process of becoming the person you were meant to be before the world told you who to be. Here is a concrete example. A woman has spent years building a professional identity. She is competent, composed, admired, but at night she cannot sleep. She feels a nameless rage. Her therapist gives her breathing exercises. They help for 10 minutes. The rage remains. Why? Because the rage is not a symptom of a chemical imbalance. It is the voice of the buried self demanding to be seen. It is not asking for a better strategy. It is asking for a funeral. The funeral of the false identity. This is not to dismiss therapy or medication. There are real biological conditions that require treatment. But there is also a form of suffering that is not pathology. It is initiation. And if you treat an initiation as a pathology, you can spend years medicating a birth signal. The first dangerous idea is this: your current psychological pain may not be a malfunction. It may be the pressure of the unlived self pushing against the walls of the mask. The second dangerous idea is worse. You cannot skip the descent. There is no technique, no supplement, No affirmation that will do this work for you. You cannot think your way into wholeness. You must go through the wasteland, and the wasteland begins with isolation. Chapter 4. The Call to the Wasteland. Jung's life offers a map, but not the kind you expect. He was medically trained. He studied at the University of Basel. He worked at the Bergsley Psychiatric Hospital in Zurich. He was, by every outer measure, a rising man of science. But in 1913, after his break with Freud, Jung began to withdraw from his public roles. He resigned from his academic position. He stepped back from the psychoanalytic establishment. He began to spend long hours alone, playing with stones and building small villages by the lake. To an outside observer, this looked like regression. To Jung, it was method. He was creating a container for the unconscious to speak. He called the images that emerged his confrontation with the unconscious. He did not call it a mental illness. He did not call it a breakdown. He called it an encounter. That distinction is critical. Because when you enter the inner wasteland, the first thing that happens is that the usual sources of identity stop working. Your job title loses its shine. Your relationships become mirrors of old patterns. Your achievements feel like borrowed clothes. This is not depression. Or rather, it may look like depression, but it is often something else, the beginning of an archetypal descent. The Greek word katabasis means a going down. In myth, the hero descends into the underworld to retrieve something that cannot be found in the daylight world. Inanna descended, Odysseus descended, Christ descended, Jung descended. And now, if you are listening carefully, something in you is being asked to descend. The wasteland is not a place of comfort. It is the space where external validation is intentionally removed. You stop performing for the crowd. You stop answering the question, "What do you do?" with the usual polished line. You allow yourself to be nobody for a while. And in that nobody, the deeper pattern begins to emerge. But here is the hidden cost. When you remove the masks, you do not find a cheerful, enlightened self waiting underneath. You find silence. You find sadness. You find a raw, unformed energy that does not know how to behave. That energy is not your enemy. It is the material of your soul, but it is unrefined. And the first time you touch it, it may feel like you are losing your mind. That feeling is the ego beginning to crack. In a culture that treats stability as the highest good, this sounds like a disaster. But Jung saw it differently. The ego is not the self. The ego is the small captain of a small ship. It believes it controls the ocean. The descent shows the captain that the ocean is older, deeper, and more intelligent than the ship. That is not a failure. That is the beginning of wisdom. Now, you may be wondering, is this the same as clinical depression? It can overlap, but they are not identical. Clinical depression flattens meaning. The initiatory descent deepens meaning. Clinical depression often wants to end the story. The initiatory descent wants to transform the story. If you are in acute crisis, seek professional help. Do not romanticize suffering, but also do not pathologize the soul's attempt to grow. The two can look similar. The difference is what the suffering is asking of you. Chapter 5. The ego crack. When the mask is stripped, the first thing that breaks is not your life. It is your story about your life. The story that says you are successful, or kind, or strong, or always in control. That story is a fiction, not because you are a fraud, but because any fixed story about yourself is too small. The ego crack is the moment the story stops holding. This can happen in a single event: a betrayal, a diagnosis, a job loss, a death, or it can happen slowly, over years, as a quiet erosion. Either way, the experience is similar. The floor disappears. You no longer know who you are. You no longer know what you want. You feel exposed. You feel ancient. But here is the truth the crack reveals. You were never the story. You were the storyteller. And the storyteller can write a new story. But first, the old story must be grieved. Most people turn back at this point. They feel the crack, and they rush to fill it with noise, with work, with food, with sex, with distraction. I need you to hear this clearly. The crack is not the end of you. It is the end of the false you. And what comes next can only be reached by staying in the emptiness long enough to hear what it is saying. And what it says may surprise you. It does not speak in ideas. It speaks in the body. Chapter 6. The body is the archive of the soul. Jung often said that the unconscious is not only in the head, it is in the body. He was not alone in this. Long before modern neuroscience mapped the vagus nerve, ancient systems understood that memory is stored in tissue. The body is not a machine that carries the brain. The body is an archive. It records what the conscious mind refuses to feel. When the persona begins to crumble, the body often becomes louder. You might feel tightness in the chest without a medical cause. You might feel heat in the hands. You might wake at the same hour every night, as if something is knocking. These are not random malfunctions. They are signals from a layer of knowing that lives below language. Think of a woman who has spent 10 years performing calm in a difficult marriage. She has learned to smile at parties, to say she is fine, to manage the household. Then one day, out of nowhere, she has a panic attack in a grocery store. The medical model will call it anxiety. That is not wrong, but it is incomplete. The panic is the body finally saying what the mind has refused to say. I cannot keep performing this. The body is not attacking her. It is trying to save her. This is the somatic turn. When the ego can no longer shield you from raw inner truth, the nervous system shifts. It may move into fight, flight, or freeze. It may release old grief. It may tremble. Many people mistake this for getting worse, but in the descent, what looks like collapse is often release. The mask was holding tension. When the mask drops, the tension has nowhere to hide. The techniques for listening to the body are not complicated, but they require patience. The first is stillness. Not meditation as a performance, but simple, undefended silence. Sit without a screen. Let the body speak. The second is tracking sensation. When an emotion arises, do not ask, why am I feeling this? Ask, where do I feel this? Is it a knot in the stomach? A weight on the chest? The location is the language. The third is movement. The body often needs to complete an action that was never allowed. It may need to shake. It may need to walk. It may need to press its hands against a wall. This is not theater. It is regulation. Here's the difficult part. The body will not show you a tidy story. It will show you fragments. A memory of being 5 years old. A smell. A flash of a room. A sudden sob. These fragments are the archive opening. If you panic, you will slam it shut. If you stay curious, the story begins to reconstruct itself. And underneath that story is a pattern. Now that pattern is not unique to you. It is ancient. It is what Jung called the archetype. And once you feel it, you realize that your personal pain is connected to something far older and far larger than your biography. Chapter 7. The archetype beneath the wreckage. When the personal mask is stripped away, you do not find a blank slate. You find a living design. Jung called it the archetype. These are not fixed rules or zodiac signs. They are deep patterns of human experience. The mother, the father, the warrior, the lover, the trickster, the wise old man, the shadow. They appear in myths, dreams, and fairy tales because they live in the collective unconscious. Your personal suffering is a local expression of an ancient pattern. That is why a myth written 3,000 years ago can describe your current crisis better than your own journal. Not because the myth is about you, because you are living the myth. Think of a man who loses his job, then his marriage, then his home. From the outside, he is failing, but from the inside, he may be living the descent of the king. In the old stories, the king must be wounded before he can rule wisely. The wound is not a punishment, it is a prerequisite. His public identity had to be stripped so that a more authentic sovereignty could emerge. This is not about delusion, it is about pattern recognition. When you see your life as a story, you stop being only a victim of circumstances. You become a participant in a larger unfolding. That shift does not erase the pain, but it gives the pain meaning. And meaning is what allows a human being to endure almost anything. Jung spent years studying alchemy, not because he believed in turning lead into gold literally, but because the alchemical process described the transformation of the psyche. The first stage is called nigredo, blackening. It is the burning away of the false self. It is unpleasant. It is necessary. The next stages involve washing, whitening, and eventually reddening, but the whole process begins in the dark. If you try to skip the dark, you do not get gold. You get a polished imitation. The archetypal pattern is not a personality type. It is a direction. It is the shape your life takes when you stop forcing yourself into a borrowed shape. You cannot see it until the borrowed shape collapses. That is why the collapse is sacred. It is not the end. It is the unveiling. But here is the question you must hold. Are you willing to meet what is under the wreckage? Because what is under there is not always pretty. It includes the shadow. Chapter 8. The shadow is not the enemy. Jung used the term shadow to describe the parts of yourself that you have hidden, denied, or projected onto others. It contains your rage, your envy, your lust, your cruelty, your neediness. It also contains your buried power, your unexpressed creativity, your forbidden desires. The shadow is not only bad, it is simply unacceptable. And because it is unacceptable, it goes underground. But it does not disappear. It runs your life from below. You can hear the shadow in the way you criticize others. The person who enrages you is often carrying a trait you have denied in yourself. The colleague who seems lazy mirrors your own suppressed need for rest. The neighbor who seems arrogant mirrors your own unclaimed confidence. The partner who seems needy mirrors your own buried longing to be held. Every strong emotional reaction is a clue. When you enter the inner wasteland, the shadow stops hiding. It comes forward. You may feel sudden anger at people who have not changed. You may feel grief for lost years. You may feel desire for things you were told were wrong. This is not regression. This is retrieval. The shadow contains the energy you disowned. To become whole, you must reclaim it. Not to act it out destructively, but to hold it consciously. This is the difference between integration and indulgence. A man who integrates his anger does not shout at his family. He uses the energy of that anger to set boundaries. A woman who integrates her lust does not destroy her marriage. She stops performing as a sexless saint and allows her aliveness to return. Integration is not letting the shadow run the show. It is bringing the shadow into the room, offering it a seat, and asking what it needs. Jung said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Most people think they accept themselves, but they only accept the polished parts. The descent asks you to accept the unpolished parts, not as flaws to be fixed, but as material to be used. Here is a simple practice. When you feel a strong reaction to someone, write down the trait that bothers you. Then ask, where have I disowned this in myself? The answer may not come quickly, but if you keep asking, the shadow will begin to speak. And when it speaks, you will understand why you have been so tired. You have been spending enormous energy keeping half of yourself in exile. That energy is now available. It comes back slowly. It comes back as strength, as clarity, as libido, as creativity. But before it returns, you must stop pretending to be innocent. The innocent mask is one of the most exhausting masks of all. Chapter 9. Active imagination, the inner dialogue. Jung did not just theorize about the unconscious. He built a method for speaking with it. He called it active imagination. The idea is simple but powerful. You create a quiet space. You let an image or emotion arise. Then you engage it as if it were a person. You ask questions. You listen. You write or paint what comes. This is not hallucination. It is intentional dialogue. Think of it as opening a channel between the conscious mind and the deeper self. The conscious mind is not the only intelligence in the psyche. There is a wiser, older intelligence beneath it. Active imagination gives that intelligence a voice. A man may sit quietly and feel a heaviness in his chest. Instead of ignoring it, he asks, "What are you?" An image appears, a boy locked in a small room. He asks the boy, "What do you need?" The boy says, "I need to run." The man begins to journal about the places in his life where he feels trapped. That conversation did not happen in his head as a thought. It happened as a living image. The image carried truth. This practice can feel strange at first. That is because the modern mind has been trained to dismiss images as fantasy. But Jung believed that images are the native language of the soul. Dreams, myths, art, and symptoms all speak in images. If you refuse to learn the language, you remain deaf to your own depths. The unconscious is not a dumpster. It is a partner. It has been trying to communicate with you for years. Through dreams, through slips of the tongue, through accidents, through bodily symptoms, through the people you attract and repel. Active imagination is simply a more direct way of answering the call. Here is the key. You do not worship the images. You negotiate with them. The unconscious is not always right. It is not always moral. It is older, deeper, and less socialized. You need the ego to mediate. The goal is not to drown in the unconscious. The goal is to build a bridge. That bridge is what allows the descent to become a return. But before the return, there is one more thing you must understand. The images will eventually point you back to the world, because the soul does not want to stay in the wasteland forever. It wants to live. Chapter 10. The return without the old mask. The descent is not meant to last forever. The hero who stays in the underworld becomes a ghost. The goal is to return, but not as the same person. You return with the gold, the knowledge, the strength, the integration. But the return is often more disorienting than the descent, because the world still expects the old mask. Your family may expect the old you. Your job may expect the old you. Your friends may feel uncomfortable with the new boundary you have set. This is the test. It is easy to be real alone. It is much harder to be real in a room full of people who want the performance. But if you retreat back into the mask now, you will lose what you found. The return requires courage, not the courage to fight, the courage to be seen. Jung did not become a hermit forever. He returned to his practice, to writing, to teaching. But he returned as a different man. He had integrated enough of his shadow to speak with authority. He had touched the archetypes deeply enough to recognize them in his patience. He had built a vessel strong enough to hold the fire. That vessel is what the descent creates. Here's the difference between a false self and a sovereign self. The false self asks, "What do they need me to be?" The sovereign self asks, "What is true? And how can I serve that truth without causing unnecessary harm?" The false self is reactive. The sovereign self is responsive. The false self is anxious about being liked. The sovereign self is concerned with being real. The false self repeats, the sovereign self creates. This does not mean you become perfect. It means you become whole enough to fail without shattering. You become honest enough to say no without guilt. You become alive enough to feel pleasure without shame. These are not small things. They are the marks of individuation. But there is a warning. The path is not linear. You will cycle through the wasteland many times in a life. Each descent goes deeper. Each mask falls away at a new level. The first descent may strip the social media mask. The next may strip the career mask. The next may strip the parent mask. The next may strip the spiritual mask. There is always another layer. And that is not bad news. It is the structure of growth. Most people stop at the first layer. They have one dark night and then spend the rest of their lives building a new, more sophisticated mask around the experience. They talk about it. They brand it. They turn the descent into a performance. That is the trap of the spiritual ego. It is the most subtle mask of all. How do you know if you are building a new mask? Check your language. If you need others to see you as wise, you are wearing a mask. If you need others to see you as broken, you are wearing a mask. If you need to be the one who has it together, you are wearing a mask. The sovereign self does not need to be seen as anything. It simply is what it is. And that is enough. Chapter 11. The sovereign individual in a chaotic world. Why does this matter now? Because we are living through a crisis of identity. The digital world rewards performance. Algorithms select for outrage, polish, and predictability. People are becoming brands before they become selves. The result is a global exhaustion. The more connected we are, the more unreal we feel. Jung saw this coming. He warned that modern people would be cut off from the mythic dimension of life. He said that we would mistake information for meaning and technology for progress. The cure, he believed, was not to abandon the modern world. The cure was to become an individual strong enough to live in it without being swallowed by it. That is the sovereign individual. Not a rebel for show, not a contrarian, but a person who has done the inner work. A person who knows their shadow. A person who has walked through the wasteland and returned with a spine. A person who can hold the tension of a chaotic world without collapsing into rage, numbness, or performance. This is not a destination. It is a practice. Every day, the world will ask you to abandon yourself. Every day, you will have to choose again. The choice is rarely dramatic. It is 1,000 small choices. Will you say what you mean? Will you stop scrolling? Will you sit in the silence? Will you feel the feeling? Will you keep the boundary? Will you tell the truth? The ego crack that began in the wasteland becomes a daily opening. It becomes the space where the real self can breathe. Over time, that space grows. The mask becomes less necessary. The performance becomes less interesting. The noise becomes less compelling. And you begin to feel for the first time in years that you are alive. Not successful, not admired, not validated. Alive, that is the birth of the individual. It is not a loud event. It is a quiet, steady emergence. It is the moment you realize that you do not need to be anyone else, not because you are special, but because you are real, and the real, once found, is worth more than any mask. Chapter 12. 5 practices for the first week. You may be asking, this sounds profound, but what do I actually do on Monday morning? Fair question. The descent is not an escape from daily life. It is a shift in how you live daily life. Here are 5 practices. Each one is small enough to begin now. Each one is deep enough to crack the shell. 1. Create a daily silence. It need not be long. 20 minutes. No phone, no agenda. Sit and let the body speak. Do not try to fix what arises. Just observe. This practice is not about relaxation. It is about listening. The voice of the buried self often appears only when the noise stops. 2. Track your performance moments. Notice when you smile automatically, when you say yes automatically, when you laugh at a joke you do not find funny. Do not shame yourself. Just notice. Awareness is the first fracture. The mask cannot survive being seen. 3. Dialogue with the shadow. Take a journal. Write a question with your dominant hand. Then switch hands and let the other hand answer. This may feel awkward. That is the point. You are bypassing the polished mind and allowing the hidden self to speak. Over time, this dialogue becomes a bridge. 4. Move the body before analyzing the mind. When a strong emotion hits, do not immediately ask why. First, let the body move. Walk, shake, breathe deeply. The body often needs to discharge before the mind can understand. This order matters. 5. Reduce the audience. Every mask has an audience. The persona is maintained by the gaze of others. If you want the mask to weaken, spend less time performing for an audience. That may mean fewer posts, fewer explanations, fewer attempts to manage what people think. It may feel lonely. That loneliness is the beginning of the wasteland. It is temporary. Each of these practices is a doorway. You do not need to do all of them perfectly. You need to begin. The descent meets you where you begin. Chapter 13. The mythic pattern and the birth of the individual. Carl Jung believed that modern people suffer from a loss of myth. We have technology, medicine, information, but we have forgotten how to live inside a meaningful story. The result is a flat, anxious, restless existence. We chase metrics because we cannot feel destiny. We seek validation because we cannot feel worth. We scroll because we cannot face the silence. The descent restores the mythic dimension. It reconnects you to the pattern that has always existed in human souls. You are not just a data point. You are a story unfolding. That story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has a wound, a descent, a retrieval, and a return. It has helpers and enemies. It has a shadow and a light. It has meaning. When Jung sat in his tower at Bollingen, he carved stone and painted images. He did not do this to be productive. He did it to give form to the inner myth. He understood that the unconscious speaks in images. The rational mind wants explanations. The soul wants images. That is why dreams feel so vivid and important. They are the myth speaking in the only language the ancient brain trusts. If you want to know your myth, look at your recurring dreams. Look at the stories you loved as a child. Look at the patterns in your relationships. Look at the moments in your life that felt fated. These are not random. They are clues to the archetypal pattern that is trying to live through you. The birth of the individual is not the creation of a unique brand. It is the discovery of a unique expression of a universal pattern. You are not supposed to invent yourself from nothing. You are supposed to remember yourself from the depths. And the depths are not empty. They are full. Here is the final question. I want you to sit with it. What would you do if you were no longer afraid of being seen? Not seen as successful, not seen as attractive, not seen as enlightened, just seen. In your fatigue, in your longing, in your strange, unpolished, radiant truth. If you can answer that question, you have already begun the return. If you cannot, do not force it. The answer is not in the head. It is in the body. It is in the silence. It is in the wasteland. And it will find you when you stop performing long enough to be found. The mask did not appear in a day. It will not fall in a day. But every moment of honest attention loosens it. Every act of silence weakens it. Every time you choose truth over image, you reclaim a piece of the self that was buried. That is the real work. That is the only